What happened was true. The most bizarre and brutal series of crimes in America.
Welcome to the Damian and Devlin Show, and this is our review for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is the original 1974 version that was directed by Tobe Hooper and stars Marilyn Burns and Gunnar Hansen. Now, I chose this one, and this is one of my favorite horror films, and Damian has not seen it, but he has seen the remake.
Yeah. Let me just tell you, the remake literally does not hold a candle to the original. Like, I'm literally pulling at my hair here.
As you can see, we just watched it, and I'm glad to see, not that I want to see Damian upset, but this is a very anxiety-filled film. Like, try not to say that too much.
You're probably still on
Right.
the edge of your seat.
Right.
Holy, I'm still climbing down. I'm still shaking.
I have seen this movie several times. I watch it every couple of years. I can't watch it every year because it's just... we'll get to all that in a minute. A little background for you guys who don't know about the movie. Basically, this was when it first came in theaters, it was a low-budget film. It was Tobe Hooper's first film. $300,000 to make. It went on to make $30 million. Now, that's incredible because of the fact that it was banned in so many places. Now,
why was it banned?
It was banned because they just didn't like the idea of the whole massacre thing. Now, actually,
because maybe they also said it was based on like a true story or something?
Yes, they actually put that it was loosely based on a true story, even though it's very loosely based.
I would hope so.
There was a guy named Ed Gain, I think his name is. Look him up if you want to really get terrified. Apparently, this man is responsible for the movies Psycho, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Silence of the Lambs.
Jeez.
All three of those movies were inspired by this guy, but none of the events of this film actually happened.
This guy must have been a real piece of work if he inspired all of those movies.
Absolutely. Three of the biggest horror movies of all time.
Jeez.
Anyhow, this movie, Tobe Hooper actually downgraded the blood because he was convinced he could get a PG rating on a movie called Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
For kids.
Right, and this movie doesn't have a lot of gore in it, but there's so much anxiety that they basically told him, you have a guy running around with some kind of weird face thing with a chainsaw. You're not getting a PG no matter if there's no blood in this movie.
I kind of think, who's crazier? Leatherface or Tobe Hooper thinking you could get a PG rating?
The last thing I'll say about it, when it first came out, it got a cult following, but people actually gave it bad reviews, saying this was just exploitation. But since then, it has actually been looked at as one of the greatest horror movies of all time because of the nerve-wracking impulse. And I think Damian's going to share that in his positives, or are you going to put that as a negative? Let's start with your positives.
Honestly, I've seen a lot of horror movies. And coming out of just watching this remake, I've literally never seen anything like this. As I said, and you hate me for this, or you look upon me questionably for this, but I saw the remake for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre when I was 11 or 12 years old, and it scared me when I was a kid, but I remember a lot about it. And I revisited again when I was a teenager, and it was just your typical like horror kind of movie that was remade in like the mid to late 2000s.
They did a good job on the remake.
They did do a good job.
But it's so polished.
It is very polished, and there's nothing really that stood out for me other than the fact that obviously Leatherface runs around with a chainsaw. Like, that was the biggest thing for me. But with regards to this movie, like, oh my gosh, I'm still thinking about it. You and I were talking throughout the first, like, maybe half an hour of the movie.
Yeah.
And we were cracking jokes, just talking about it, the 70s, groovy bro, like, let's pick up some random hitchhikers. things that would never happen in this day and age, but obviously Devlin has lived through it. He knows what that was like. I never have. I would never touch a hitchhiker, especially now, so after seeing this movie. But there was a point in the movie where I just stopped talking. And that's because I could even feel it now that I'm kind of climbing down after watching this movie. I stopped breathing. It felt like I was holding my breath for what seemed like the rest of the movie, and I was literally shaking, and my heartbeat was just constantly. I was like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen next? Like, is this girl gonna get out of this? And then the whole like dinner scene, like, I'd never seen anything so bizarre, so disturbing, so creepy. It literally, just thinking about it, makes my skin want to crawl. And
I love that you're having that effect. You know, I love that a movie's like so old and stuff, as you would call it, old, has that effect on you. Because it, as you said, you've seen a lot of horror and you were disturbed by this. And I think images of this will stay with you, because I will have trouble sleeping tonight, and I've seen this movie several times.
I never once, to be quite honest, I never once felt like that was a movie. I never felt like I was watching actors on a set. Like, the way that the girl reacted to those scenes, I literally thought I was watching a snuff film. Like, I thought I was there, and like, this was just some movie that they found, like, hey, this is shock value, here you go, this is actual real people. That's how realistic her reactions were. And I think you actually brought it up, saying like, I don't think anybody like really told this girl about what was going to happen on set, and her reactions were real. That's how genuine they felt to me. And as a result of that, I just felt it, and I was just,
well, you know, they always talk about Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street as the final girl. They talk about, you know, Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween, but somebody should really give kudos to Marilyn Burns, because her eyes, her scream, everything in this movie is tense and terror-filled, and we take it with her. You know, so I'll let you finish your positives. I think these are positives.
No, totally, they are positives. Like, literally, when it can suck me in and make me feel like I'm literally watching real life instead of a staged movie where I know like they're all probably laughing about it and like shoving props in their mouths and taking pictures and just having a good old time on set. When I think that literally these are creepy dudes and they have totally messed up heads and that they're still out there, you know that's a good movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does. And I think the thing is, I think it's so low budget that it does feel like a found footage film. Yeah. Many times I feel like we're stalking these people, like, what's going to happen? Because the shots are like, they're artistic when you see them now, but at the time they probably weren't thinking we're making art. We want to scare the bejeebus out of people.
Yeah, I mean, if I had been able to travel back in time, I would have loved to see like some of the first audience's reactions to that in the actual theater, being like, oh my gosh. I read the back of the DVD cover after we finished watching it, and it says, I think kind of what you're going off of, that it was banned. It said it was like so shocking to some people that they had to leave the theater. And literally don't blame them for that, because like, holy crap, that was very shocking.
Do you have any more positives? I know it's kind of a jumble because it's all one big...
I did like the fact that, to be quite honest, I did like the fact that there wasn't a lot of gore. I feel like if there
They played with your mind.
They did, and especially when they showed Leatherface like cutting people with the chainsaw, they did it kind of a way so that you couldn't actually see it, so it left more to your imagination. I think that's the scarier part, because like you could show somebody brutal violence and gore and just horrific scenes, and then you kind of, with my generation at least, we kind of get desensitized to it. And like I could watch that, and while I know it's wrong, it doesn't really affect me. But the fact that I can't see something, my mind starts going, oh, what's going on? What is that? What's happening behind that convenient blockage of the screen? And I think that's more disturbing than anything else. So honestly, those are some fantastic ways to film a movie, and it felt real at all times.
I'll give 4 quick positives. Number 1, I have to give a shout out to the fact that what I love most about this movie is that you follow these teenagers for the first 45 minutes to an hour. And then the movie totally changes pace, and suddenly you realize that you're now watching the family, and that's all I'll say because I don't want to give anything up. But it's almost like two movies, and you thought the first part was tense, but you haven't felt anything.
No.
Yeah. Number two, the soundtrack is amazing because they don't really use. Like, they use music in the background on radios, but what I'm talking about is the background music here, I swear they used tools. One sounds like they took a metal sheet and thing, and there's, I don't even know how they made the sound. I can't even do it justice, but you put 5 minutes.
Sound. I'd heard it so many times growing up, like anything horror related, there's like noise, and I never knew it came from that. And like, you don't realize it, but that noise just... It does make the hair on your arms and whatnot and the back of your neck just stand on edge. It's really disturbing noise in itself.
Number 3 is I am a ball of tension through the whole movie. Tobe Hooper should get... Like, he is one of the icons. Unfortunately, we just lost him. And I have to say that he keeps you on edge. Just when you think you can't get unnerved anymore. Like, I feel like I almost need like a massage or a bath or a hot shower because I'm just so... Thank you. Because I'm just so tense just because of that. And I know I'm going to have trouble sleeping. That moment I know I have to do my, go to the washroom in the middle of the night. I'm every door I'm going to picture that image and stuff. 4, all I have to say is Damian's reaction. The way he's talking about it now and he still feels that way after being desensitized to so much things... That's a positive right there. I'm using him as a positive because 1974, it still has a reaction to somebody who has seen a lot. And that's a positive in my book.
Well, I'm very honored. I'm very honored that I get to be one of his positives.
Negatives.
Before we go into the
sure.
negatives, just one thing going off on that, and my whole like desensitized thing, I think if you were to show this movie to modern audiences, I still don't think they could handle it. Because they can take the intense violence, they can take the extreme gore, but there's just, if you haven't seen this movie, you have to experience it for yourself. There's nothing to really describe it until you've seen it, other than just saying like it's literally a panic attack in a like an hour and a half time frame.
That's a good way to put it.
I still don't think they'd be able to handle it, to be quite honest. I think that they would still give it bad reviews because they would not be able to stand it.
Well, the horror genre goes through so many phases. You got your slasher flicks, then you got your monster movies, and then they did the found footage movies. Then it became the gore fests, the thing. Maybe it'll come around back to these, like, building atmosphere.
I hope so, because this was the first movie... Yeah. Since maybe Alien when I was a kid.
Alien, Psycho, these are movies that don't use a lot of blood to get the anxiety level.
This was the first movie in that time frame, and we're talking like 13, 14 years to actually scare me. So this was really, really well done.
So do you have any negatives? There's got to be some.
There are some negatives. Definitely in this case, the positives outweigh the negatives. But with regards to the negatives... I always have to hate on 70s fashion. I'm sorry, but it's
you can't
just
blame
awful.
somebody for what we were wearing.
Those bell bottoms.
And I was a little
awful.
kid, so I was wearing probably overalls and stuff.
The bell bottoms that she was wearing, like, come on, girl, they're no good.
They terrified him more than anything in this movie. That's what he's going to have nightmares
They're
about.
shielding my eyes from the horrible fashion. The hairstyles, like the curly afros that they were trying to go for, like I just don't.
I love that's a negative. Yeah.
It totally is. It's a valid one too. Like anybody that didn't grow up in the 70s, you'll agree with me. The fashion was just a disaster.
It is, but when you watch the remake of this, and please watch the original first, they can't never get the 70s right. I like when they're filmed in the 70s because we were just like, that's what it is. But I love that. I love that about you, that you consider that a negative.
It totally is. I can't get
It can be distracting. That one guy had a Mr. Brady shirt. With floral totally and stuff. Did. And I'm like, yeah, even that's a little too 70s for me.
There was, with regards to more negatives, there was a moment in the movie that kind of made me question it a little bit, and it was before the real anxiety stuff happened. So when all the others started to go missing, and the brother and the sister were sitting there talking about whether they should leave or go looking for their friends. And the sister wanted to go looking, but the brother in the wheelchair, he didn't want to. And so he goes looking into the van there to see if he can honk the horn. And while he's taking a look, he's like, the keys are gone! But then the lights on the truck are still on.
Yeah.
So how is that possible? So that really...
Yeah, if that's a 70s car thing or van thing, let us know, because we both thought it was a little...
Yeah, because I drive. I have my own car, and when I have to turn the key a little bit, I don't turn the engine on, but I have to turn the key a little bit just to get the lights on. So that kind of drew me out of it. Other than that, I felt like the movie was pretty consistent with the plot overall. I do feel some of the practical effects were a little cheap and laughable. There was a moment in the movie when Leatherface took his chainsaw and he was cutting the door. And to me, it looked like the chainsaw was cutting through a piece of cardboard.
Yeah.
So I felt that was a little weak.
Yeah. I also thought I could probably catch the girl a couple times. There's a long chase sequence that... If you don't do this until you saw the movie, but if you go on YouTube after, they actually have that with the Benny Hill music playing, and it actually changes it a bit, but it's still suspenseful. I'm still
it felt like he was maybe toying with her a little bit in that.
I think so. That's what I'm going to give them
totally
because
could have just been
right. I was like, I could probably throw it at her and it would hit her, but yeah.
Other than that, like
Was that your negatives?
I really enjoyed the soundtrack. Other than those few practical effects, I would say there's not many negatives I have for this movie.
I only have one negative for this movie. Because I was thinking about it. There's some really dark shots where you don't see much, and I was thinking, is that a negative to me? But I think those low, cheap budget shots actually made the movie a little bit because it built more tension. Because it was like I could only see bits and pieces.
Well, keep in mind as well, like they would not in real life. They wouldn't be able to see much. I hate in newer movies whenever they show a nighttime scene, it's illuminated. You can see everything. That's not real life, especially when you're out in the middle of nowhere, Texas. There's no lights around.
Yeah.
And then it did show very clearly that there were clouds covering the moon. So very, very realistic to be that dark.
Yeah, absolutely. My only negative is I wish they spent maybe 5-10 extra minutes in this movie, since it's a really short movie too, developing the characters. I didn't care about any of the teens.
True,
and in fact, I probably tomorrow wouldn't be able to pick them out, except if she was freaking out and screaming and doing her eye thing. The characters, it's like, that's the wheelchair guy. That's the awkward guy with the fro and glasses. That's probably the hot 70s guy at the time, and that's the one with the nice bum, as Damien kept saying.
I said no such thing.
No,
I appreciate all people equally.
Yes. And I'm not saying
was
it was
pretty
even...
good looking.
That was
nice
the only
shots from
negative.
behind too. Like, I think the director agreed with me.
I think...
I'm not going to say anymore.
I think my only negative is if I cared about these characters, I would have really been on edge, even more. And I was on edge. But if I was like, oh my God, are they gonna? But it was I had trouble with that.
I don't want you to fall over with a heart attack.
No.
I need you for these reviews.
Well, I am thankful for that now. So, before we get to our ratings, you think this will be a movie you have in your collection, or do you not want to see this again?
I honestly don't think I would be able to handle it a second time. I think.
Are you serious?
I think this is a one and done movie.
Here, I always think that you're the real tough guy, and I've seen this 3-4 times. I've watched it in the morning, afternoon, night. But no, that's an honest opinion.
Yeah, I think this is a one and done movie. I like the fact that I lived the experience and I have it under my belt now, and I can say, oh yeah, I've totally seen it. But I don't think I would ever watch it again.
So I'm interested. What is your number from 1 to 5?
I didn't expect to actually give it this much of a rating. I went into it thinking, it's a 70s horror movie. It's going to be really lame, really cheesy.
I was intrigued. I didn't know which way you'd go, but I had a feeling when you started getting quiet, we had a winner here.
I'm giving it a 4.
Wow.
I'm giving it a 4.
I'm impressed. He doesn't give high numbers that often.
It deserves it, though. Every number.
And I'm going to go 4.5 on this, and if I cared about the characters, I would have gone all 5. It's a horror classic to me, and I think it deserves 4.5. And seeing what it did to Damien, I'm going to give it a 4.5.
I'll never forgive you, by the way. This has scarred me. You're saying you're going to go to bed and you have to take some NyQuil to fall asleep.
I might.
You're dreading your walk to the bathroom. I'm going to go to bed and I'm never going to sleep again.
Well, thank you for watching a review of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Hey, give it a try. Don't make us scare you off. These are positives. We mostly were positive with this review. definitely check it out and tell us what movies you want us to check out next.
We really love having you guys here. We're having a blast. Definitely stay tuned for the rest of October because we're going to have tons more horror movies. It is Halloween month, so expect a lot of surprises and a lot of suspense. As always, make sure you subscribe. You want to keep up. You want to know what we're doing next, and we want you there with us. Like us, and then also let us know how you think we're doing, and let us know what movies you want to see us review, because it could be anything, as evidence already. As always, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.